Hi, good evening. I'm Lonnie Stonich, the Executive Director of FAN. We're a nonprofit that presents programming exploring human development across the lifespan. I am so excited to welcome you to tonight's conversation between Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, Georgie Wisen-Vincent, and Carly Andrews. Thanks for joining us. FAN's YouTube channel has an archive of over 350 videos of past events, so be sure to subscribe to the channel to get updates when new recordings are posted. And now for some introductions. Dr. Tina Payne Bryson is the author of The Bottom Line for Baby and co-author with Dan Siegel, who we hosted in 2016, of The Power of Showing Up, The Yes Brain, and 2 New York Times bestsellers, The Whole Brain Child and No Drama Discipline. She is a psychotherapist and founder and executive director of the Center for Connection, a multidisciplinary clinical practice, and the co-founder with Georgie Wisen-Vincent of the Play Strong Institute, a center devoted to the study, research, and practice of play therapy through a neurodevelopmental lens. We first met Tina last year when she interviewed Dr. Elisa Pressman for us for our Zoom event last year. Georgie Wisen-Vincent is a nationally recognized play therapy expert and co-founder and head of faculty for the Play Strong Institute. She completed advanced study in play therapy at the University of Roehampton, London, and is also a child, adolescent, and family psychotherapist in private practice in Los Angeles. Joining them is our friend Carly Andrews, the executive director of the Alliance for Early Childhood, which is a FAN partner. It's a nonprofit organization devoted to nurturing the healthy development of young children by equipping early childhood educators, parents, and families with resources, education, and support. It's a fabulous organization. Before coming to the Alliance, Carly served as head of school at Baker Demonstration School in Wilmette, Illinois, head of school at Willow Wind School in Iowa City, Iowa, and assistant head of school and head of middle school at Bosque School in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And now let's welcome Tina Payne Bryson, Georgie Wisen-Vincent, and Carly Andrews to Fanland.
Thank you so much to FAN. Thank you, Lonnie. Georgie, Tina, this is a beautiful book. It is about the inner lives of children. It is about our relationships with them. It is about their sense of belonging and connection in relationship to us. And you talk about play as the secret language of children. And this book is our pathway. We're adults. We've lost the way. We're clunky. And this book just guides us through. Each of these strategies are just ways into entering the world of children. So thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be in conversation with you.
Thank you so much for being in conversation with us and for being so excited about the book. It really is an honor from your beautiful work. We're so glad you're leading us tonight.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
We're so glad to be here.
Wonderful, Georgie. So let's dive in with the way of play. What inspired you, and what do you hope that adults that read this really take away from the strategies that you've laid out?
I was not going to write another book. I had written quite a few and I was tired of writing. I was tired. But Georgie and we actually met in a store. She had her little boy in a stroller and she recognized me and she is like, I'm a therapist in town and I do play therapy. And then we were just so excited about each other's work that we started working together. And so we just our passion is about, helping kids grow well. And that is done best in positive, predictable, safe relationships. And play is such a great way to do that for parents and children. So anyway, Georgie is so passionate about getting these strategies that she knows about and has been teaching other therapists and parents and educators to do. And she said, I really want to write a parenting curriculum. And so she was taking a lot of the stuff from the neurodevelopmental whole brain lens that I write from and bringing in all of her expertise. And so she wrote this thing up for parents. And as I read it, I was like, this is a book. We have to share it with people. So we just got super excited about sharing it. And one of the things that we know is that, as you said, play is the language of children, and it's what they love most to do. And as parents, and I've raised 3 children, my youngest is a senior in high school this year. it's so much of the time my experience and what I hear from other parents is, okay, fine, I'll play with them, but they see it as like just a way to get through the day, to just pass the time because their kid wants to do it. So more like a chore as opposed to what it actually is and the benefits, which I'll let Georgie talk about. But we also oftentimes find it really boring. I used to find sometimes play really, really boring. I'd like, if I have to slam these two guys together one more time, I'm gonna like, and then, or they're like, I kind of like doing it, but my kid tells me I'm doing it wrong and I don't know what to do. So I can sit on the floor, but I don't know what to do. So really this book is strategies that can happen in just literally seconds and minutes as opposed to hours, that allow us to know our child in a deeper way, build our relationships with them, build skills, and we'll talk specifically how to do that, and help them process whatever either is happening in their world that they're trying to make sense of, or help them try on different things that are part of unfolding development. So it's really, really rich. And most people just talk about structured play, like board games, sports, or free play, where kids are doing their own thing without their grown-ups. But this book, and Lawrence Cohen's book, Playful Parenting, which I love, was the only other book we knew of, and that book has been around for a long time, that would tell parents what to do and how to do it. So, Georgie.
Yeah, no, I mean it's so exciting. I still can't believe that I got to write a book with one of my heroes, somebody that was on my, next to my bed as I was raising my baby, trying to figure it all out. And then just, there she is suddenly one day. And luckily Tina comes to the work that she does and all of the important brain science that she's already shared with parents in such an accessible, relatable way, that she's so playful and has spent years playing with her boys. And I'm so lucky that I get to hear the stories about the way that she's played with not only her own kids, but clients that she's had in the past, and getting families to play together as well. I think we share this sort of passion for, we see play as children's first developmental language, that before kids can tell us what's wrong, before they can talk about problems, before we can really like teach in a way that they can access, what we're trying to tell them and instill in them, just using our words, that they are figuring things out and giving us a window into who they are and our understanding of them, and being able to deepen our relationships through this creative language that is already set up for us just through neurobiology, like the brain connections that children are building in those moments where we know that the same parts of the brain are lighting up in both of our, both of our biology at the same time when we're mirroring each other. For example, if my son makes a silly noise that sounds like a fart or something, and I'm mirroring him, we know that these brain scans tell us that we're in sync, we're synchronized together. Those are magical moments that we just wanted parents and educators and other professionals that are working with kids to be able to tap into the mystery and the magic of more of those moments without it having to take a really long time, drive us absolutely batty, with the, sort of repetitiveness that can take over sometimes. We'll talk about why the repetition is important too, and we talk more about that in the book. And without it having to be really expensive and buy all these toys, and we want to sort of bring these moments to life in a different way for parents, and we hope everybody will check out the book for those reasons. And we have lots more to say about it too.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you also base the book in the context of this book is for parents and caregivers, but this book is also for teachers and librarians and people in schools that are working with children, and grandparents, people that work with and love children. So when you hear the word parent, and I don't know, there are a lot of teachers on this call, a lot of schools that are really interested in this book, but this is the language, not only in the home, but this is a language in school. And I think also, just to let those of you know who haven't read it, it really is a book that if you have a child sort of in that early childhood period or middle childhood or pre-adolescence. I mean, this book really spans ages for the children in your life. So, okay, so how about let's ground really quickly in this idea of why play. Like, why scientifically, developmentally is play so effective at being this way that children are able to grow?
Go ahead, Georgie.
Yeah, so we try and differentiate between these different types of play in the book. We spend a little bit of time on that. So we're really, Tina said, there's benefits to lots of different forms of play. We want kids to be getting more time in unstructured, free play. A lot of times kids are booked up. They're kind of scheduled with a lot of activities. That structured play, being on sports teams, being able to be in, music lessons and having time where they're around peers and they get to like learn skills together. We love all of these forms of play. We want kids to be playing with similar age peers, different age peers, kids at school, neighborhood kids, people at home, lots and lots of outdoor, outside play. But there's something that just we haven't quite fully tapped into about adults and kids playing together, that we know there's so many I can't tell you how many studies I poured over looking at, and Tina can speak to all of the attachment benefits, but there's something important about your kid coming up to you and saying, "Look at this, mom, you've got to check this out," or "Dad," or "My teacher, I need to show you this thing that I just made or built." There's something that's lighting up around your child, that child being able to learn something new in that moment. So much motivational drive that we can tap into. And kids need to play for no reason at all, just because it's developmentally good for them. It builds cognitive skills, relationship skills, social emotional skills, all of the things that are really going to carry them through life start in the sandbox. It's all there, that they're struggling with challenges, they're building resilience, they're learning to handle stress. I mean, I could go on and on. But when an adult is available and is attuned, and they're observing something in a child's play and they're able to comment on it or join in a way that helps bring the meaning out or a story out or is building a connection with that child in that moment, there's something different and something really significant about that is backed up by tons and tons of studies on dyadic play or parent-child, teacher-child play. That's, for us, it was important enough to write a whole book about. I was in a school today where I was seeing teachers interacting with kids using some of, we called them the play strong strategies in our book, The Way of Play. Teachers are using this in the classroom, and I'm seeing their connections, their interactions transformed. And they're not getting on the floor playing with kids. It's in the look that they share. It's in the voice that they're using. It becomes something that's embodied in the adult. And there's just so much to say about it. I don't want to take up all the time, but that's why play is so important, particularly when kids get a chance to play with their significant adults.
Well, I love that observation about the school setting, and that developmental relationship is so essential to children's learning. And the tools that are in this book provide so many ways into that relationship for teachers and children. So, how about we start with the first strategy? We're adults, we're trying to remember this language, and your first strategy really grounds us with this idea of think out loud. So, would you mind talking us through it?
Yeah, do you want me to take that one too?
Yeah, take this one. Yeah. We kind of have a rhythm to like which one of us likes to talk about which strategy. So go for this.
You go. Okay, that sounds great.
This one is so important to me. I thought it was really pivotal to begin the book with what's the easiest way, what is the least amount of hassle for me to learn something that I already know how to do this. I already know as an adult. We have spent a lifetime learning how to share our thoughts out loud. We can look at something that we're seeing and we can sportscast it or we can narrate it. But thinking out loud does something so much more than just being able to look at my child building something with blocks and saying, it looks like it's a ramp. We're doing a lot more when we come up alongside, we're looking at what our child is doing. We know that kids' brains wire from the bottom up, like from the brainstem and the lower limbic system all the way up to the prefrontal cortex. It takes a lot of years for that to happen. And what I was talking to Tina about as we were writing the first strategy is like, wow, the simplest way for somebody to join in a child's play actually works from the bottom up in the same direction that kids' brains are developing. So we want to follow that wiring. And so if I come up and I see my son who's 10 and he's building something out of magnetiles or on Minecraft, or, he likes to build things. It's a fort, it's a, whatever it might be that day. And I come up and I say, it looks like you've got, really heavy roof on that thing. You're going to keep adding pillows to the top of that. I wonder what's going to happen with your roof or your ceiling. I'm just noticing, I'm observing, and I'm attuning to what he's doing. And what we notice when kids start to get a lot of this from their caregivers or their teachers is that they start to do it back to us. They become really good at reflecting on their own behavior, reflecting on what it is that they're doing and being able to say it in words. So, when you have a bunch of little kids around you and you have to keep saying, no, use your words, don't hit, or use your words, don't pinch, don't grab, share, you take turns, use your words. We're really talking about a skill that everybody's trying to teach our little ones, but kids still need this. We've found all the way up through even the tween years and beyond. My kid's almost, a preteen, and I still feel like, oh, we still got a little ways to go in getting you to like be able to explain yourself in words. So what we're really talking about is building this sort of vertical integration in the brain when kids hear us just doing the simplest thing in the world, which is saying what you see. That's thinking out loud. Not only does it communicate to them, I'm here with you, I'm watching what you're doing, I care about this, we're connecting in this moment, but it also teaches this valuable skill of reflection and being able to slow down and think before you act and be able to explain your actions to someone else. And when I teach this to clients, like we can actually curb like aggressive behavior and all kinds of ways that kids kind of act impulsively because their brains are still growing. They hear their adults kind of narrating things, saying things out loud with so many repetitions that they can't help but kind of mirror back what we're already doing. And it can head off like blow-ups between siblings. And we've seen all kinds of good results with this, especially if you're trying to teach your child something specific, like I really need you to grow into this new skill more quickly. It's so much easier for kids to learn something when they're not stressed and they're just relaxed into the ease of playing.
So just to build on that for a little bit more, what Georgie's talking about here, this think out loud strategy is really you're giving voice to the internal process that's happening for your kid. You're kind of saying out loud what they may be thinking. So it's not just sports casting, it's also tuning into the mind, right? What Dan Siegel would call mind sight, seeing your own mind, which then leads to the skill of being able to see the minds of others, right? So it's foundational for empathy, it's foundational for insight. But what's happening here, and in the story in the book is from a client that Georgie worked with who was a little guy who had a little sister who was annoying him. She was messing with his things he was building. And so basically she taught the parents to do this think out loud strategy. So they would say, it looks like you're building something and you're trying to make it really tall, that kind of thing. So what would happen then is, keep this in mind, the way we learn anything is through repeated experiences. This is what happens when, the brain is plastic, particularly in childhood. And what we mean by that is repeated experiences shape how the brain gets wired. So when we provide kids repeated experiences or reps around doing something, knowing that they learn best by, first of all, what they do themselves, and second of all, what we model for them, then their brains learn how to do this. So in the moment, we are modeling for them, taking our inside desires, thoughts, wishes, plans, emotions, and saying them out loud with words attached to them. And I want to just make one other little connection here, and then we can move on to whatever you want to, Carly. And that is Dan Siegel. People talk a lot about the idea of emotional regulation, okay? But very few people define it. And so let's just take a minute to do this, because it's one of the things we all know our kids need. It's foundational for successful relationships, for any kind of skill building or cognitive development, like learning how to do math, but also it's the foundation of mental health. So when I say regulation, I'm going to rely on Dan Siegel's definition, which is to monitor and modify. So think about this in terms of like body temperature regulation, right? I'm 53. I have a lot of body temperature shifting happening right now. So when I think about temperature regulation, I would notice, I'm feeling a little warm. So I would monitor how comfortable I am with my body temperature. And then I'm going to modify. I'm going to take off my warm cardigan, or I'm going to take off this blanket or whatever. So when we're talking about this scenario, this kid who has sibling conflict, parent uses or teacher uses think out loud, is starting to say with the child, what you think is going on inside. What it's doing is giving him reps and practice, being able to monitor, give voice to, and then modify. And in the story in the book, the boy then can start saying, I'm finishing building the tower right now. I don't want Emma to come over and mess it up. So he's able to say out loud and use his words and begin to monitor his own, like, that freaks me out, or I feel really frustrated, she's getting closer, and then modify, like, can you keep her over there while I finish building this? So this strategy is not just like, you're just like, oh, you're building a tower. What you're doing here is actually building the skills of emotional regulation.
Mm. Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so what I'd love to do is I'd love to now move to that idea of bringing emotions to life, because I think this is a great connection. I want to read this quote because it's so related to what you just said. I love it. The most profound emotional and relational learning, the kind that develops a child's ability to weather emotional storms, comes from the most basic interactions kids share with the parents and families, as well as their teachers and friends, all the way through childhood and adolescence. So this idea of emotional regulation and bringing emotions to life is such a powerful part of your book, and you talk about it in the context of the power of dramatic play. So I'd love for you just to talk a little bit about this with us. I mean, you talk about in the book how it is like this limbic workout for the brain. So say
Yeah.
more.
I mean, really, to kind of go off of emotional regulation, the phrase I love using a lot is the idea of emotional agility. So if you think about agility is what allows you to balance and shift and move and adjust and have this great facility to modify, right? So we really need our kids and want our kids to have emotional agility. And that comes with development unfolding and with the kinds of experiences we provide, and with secure attachment, when we provide secure attachment to our kids. So safe, predictable, positive relationships. I talk a lot about secure attachment, how we build it, in my book, The Power of Showing Up, with Dan Siegel. But for now, I was across the street at my neighbor's house with their 5-year-old, and the dad had a small little blow up bounce house in the back. And the little girl wanted me to hop in the bounce house with her. And of course she has rules for me, which is great. No shoes in the bounce house. So I take my shoes off, I come in, and she wants to play, the grass is lava, right? So here's how I use the strategy, bring emotions to life. I can easily be like, okay, the floor is lava. Well, what are we going to do next, right? I can just sort of follow her lead, and that's great. It's a wonderful way to interact with her. But what if I instead used it as an opportunity to still follow her lead, and without making everything too preachy or too didactic or too heavy-handed with teaching a specific lesson, but I bring emotions to life in that moment. So then I'm like, oh no, what if my foot touches the lava? Oh, I'm so freaked out. I don't know if I can try, right? Or like another example that I love to give is my son loved tying ropes to doorknobs into the top of a castle. So he would hand me an action figure, and he would be like, hey mom, you got to get this guy down to the ship. And so I'd be up at the top of the rope by the doorknob, and the ship's down here, right? And I could easily hook the guy's arm on there and go, super fun. Great. I'm joining with him. We're having mutual delight, which is really what play is all about, and what is a huge, huge factor in building secure attachment, mutual delight. So I could do that easily and we'd be having fun. But again, remember, what we're doing here is not just passing time. Something really important is happening. So what if instead I use this strategy, bring emotions to life, and I say, I don't know if I can make it. I've never done this before. I'm so scared. And then I pause. And then guess what my 4-year-old has to do? He has to figure out, because he wants that guy to come down to the ship. He's got a plan unfolding. So he's got to come up with a solution. So he has to tune into the emotions that I'm introducing in my character, and he's got to come up with a solution. So he says, don't worry, I'm sending a guy up to show you the way, or something like that. So he sends a guy up. So now my kid has just solved for and has a rep around, I'm nervous about doing something I've never done before. I'm feeling kind of anxious. Oh, guess what? Someone's going to come and help you, show up for you, lead you the way. It's better together. So all of that is coming out of his problem solving, his mind. So that's happening. In addition to, and there's so much, and we could spend the whole hour just talking about benefits of one strategy and any of them. But what's also happening is, again, we are providing language that goes with emotion. And we're providing, really this scaffolding of an internal landscape that goes along with our behaviors and our ideas and how we navigate the world. So what we're providing, and we talk about this in each of the strategies, like what your kid learns from this strategy, what they get from it. And you're also providing this implicit messaging of, we talk about emotions. I'm feeling, my character's feeling nervous right now, and I'm going to share it with you. So we're doing all these really rich things besides just having the super guy go down and say, zoop. There's a lot more when we bring emotions to life.
Love it. I love it. I love it. So help us think then about, part of the book really does a beautiful job of just talking about the sensory environment. And I feel like now we have the language to talk about the impact of the sensory environment on young children, on adolescents, on adults. And I in no way want to suggest that neurodiversity is a monolith, but it is so helpful in your book to really hear about the strategy around dialing up and down and really thinking about this. I'd love for you to help us think about this from a neurodevelopmental lens. How is this skill really important, and how is the talking about the sensory experience really helpful in managing the sort of underwhelm or overwhelm that can be a real experience of childhood?
Yeah, I have a lot of direct experience with neurodivergence, not just in the kids that I've worked with, but with my own son. And when you have a baby, you have no idea that your kid might come into the world with something like sensory differences or sensitivities, or a tendency to get overstimulated really easy when you walk into like a Costco or some other busy environment or a classroom. So it can make just living in the world much more challenging in various different ways. And sometimes people misinterpret my behavior. I'm speaking from the child's perspective, when really what I'm trying to do is make my sensory system try and match the environment that I'm in. And some kids, it takes a while for us to learn, even for adults, how to advocate for yourself when, you hear a tapping in the background and you just can't concentrate because there's tapping going on or something like that. So it's even harder for kids to be able to say, hey, look, I hear that background noise and I can't tune it out. And that's why I look like I'm all hyperactive and stuff. So having the experience of having my own child who had certain sensitivities was really enlightening. And I can relate to so many parents and educators who are grappling with, how do we best support these kids? Luckily, Tina and I know some really great occupational therapists.
And 4 of them read this chapter and gave us tons of feedback. Like, we really, and the Center for Connection, where Georgie and I both work, is an interdisciplinary team with occupational therapists.
Love it.
We're steeped.
So
Love it.
we had these OTs weigh in because we want to be as respectful and conscious of what it is that families are trying to navigate with their kids, and how often kids are getting sort of this negative feedback just for trying to live in the world, and try and make it through different environments and stuff. And one of the ways that we wanted to address it was with this strategy, dial intensity up and down. Oftentimes our kids with sensory differences, they're told, stop it, cut it out, don't do that, and they're really just trying to regulate their bodies and their emotions. And there's all this, there's all this negativity coming their way. And what happens when we give kids a hard stop on something is that we miss an opportunity to help them tune into themselves and really learn for themselves how to dial up their energy levels or their emotions or whatever, whatever might be going on internally for them, and in their mind as well, or to dial it down. And oftentimes we're more concerned about the kids who have trouble dialing it down when they need to, right? But with this strategy, you can do both. So you're really seeing, is my child not matching the expectations in the situation? And when you're just playing, you can see it quite clearly, right? For my son, it was like, we'd go to the park, he'd grab the biggest stick he could find, and he's just hitting all the bushes and and the flowers and stuff. And it's in front of everybody else at the park. And what we learned later was, I was like, what? I'm going to get the kid who's like Tarzan or something. Like, he's going to be doing this at school. What the heck? Even as a play therapist, I'm like, mystified by this behavior. What I learned from his OT was he actually has a tactile sensitivity. So he doesn't want to touch the bushes and the leaves and the flowers and stuff. He wants to like explore nature, but he wants to do it safely. And he's looking for safety to do it. So he's going to do it with a 10-foot, 10-foot pole. He will only touch it with a 10-foot pole. And it was true for food and all kinds of other stuff too. So the essence of the strategy is meet your child where they are in their play, and then pretend like there's a big, one of those old thermostat dials that you could adjust, and imagine turning them down if they need to be turned down. So if my kid is hitting the bushes with this big stick or something, then I might encourage him, maybe we can find a big mud puddle and you can stir that mud puddle with this big stick instead. And what I'm inviting him to do is not only to start paying attention. So we need to direct his attention to what's going on in his body and how he's expressing himself in the world. But I'm also directing his attention to, what does my body need in order to feel comfortable in this situation, and to give him the sensory feedback that he needs in order to make the adjustment for himself. And my son quickly learned, he was like, oh, mom's going to give me, mom's going to tell me to dial something differently. And we did it from the time that he was little. And now I have a kid who can walk into a situation and say, Mom, I really want to eat the whole cheeseburger, but the little edges around, where they toast the bun, it's too crunchy and it shouldn't be crunchy. And I don't want that part. So can I cut that part off? I don't want to be rude to the people whose house we're over at. We have kids that are now intelligent about themselves, their body, their sensory systems. We want to invite parents, we want to invite teachers to just see kids a little bit differently and to be able to meet them where they are and then make the adjustment. Go ahead, Tina.
And listen, like if your kid's hitting something and you're like, no, stop it. Like, knock it off. Like if you say that every once in a while to your kid, just a flat out no, that's fine. You're not doing any damage. No one has to be too over precious about everything. And honestly, you don't have to make every moment count so much that you're, teaching a lesson. And, sometimes people get my work wrong all the time. They'll read like No Drama Discipline and they'll say like, okay, I had a reflective dialogue with my kid for 25 minutes about their feelings about putting their shoes on, but they still won't put their shoes on. Like, what do I do? I'm like, no. You misunderstood what we're doing here. You can say it's time to put your shoes on right now. And if you have feelings about that, I will listen to them. Like, I understand you don't want to put your shoes on and we're putting your shoes on right now. And if you can't, I will help you. Right. But I think about this moment just for a second with Georgie's son with the stick. And you can, if you were like, no, you can't do that. Stop that. You're hurting the flowers. Okay, fine. But you're missing an opportunity there for him to practice reining it in. So like, I've learned this from Georgie. You could say, wow, you're hitting that really hard. Could you try medium? Right. And so thinking about, like, especially kids with ADHD or who have some asynchronous development where they may have a hard time putting the brakes on or dialing things down. It's a great opportunity to say, can you try medium? Or what if it could, I bet you could, let me see the very, very softest you could try, like barely touch it. Can you even do that? I don't think I can do it. Can you, so you can bring in this kind of thing where you're allowing for that. So that's dialing down. And then just a quick example of dialing up. So you might have kids, and every kid's a little bit different. When my kids would get dysregulated, one of them was a fighter. One of them was a fleer. He would run and hide, and he would shut down. And then it would be hard. Then I needed to help him dial up to re-engage, because he would just sort of shut down. He would literally get under things. He would withdraw. He wouldn't talk. And so, this is a time where you might just go sit and be quiet, go low and slow, maybe put a hand on the leg, get in a little bit closer. Maybe you're, and again, you're just following your lead. You might have your fingers kind of walk up their leg. You might get out a book and just start reading until they can join you. So there are ways you can kind of dial up their capacity to engage as well. And so in the chapter, we go into detail about how to help them dial up and down. Amazing. We all need that. Honestly, most of the strategies in this book are good for your significant other too.
Okay. I love that. Right. Well, Georgie, too, that is such a beautiful story to tell about your kiddo, and this idea that the children develop within the mutuality of these relationships is such a part that is just at the heart of your book. And so, in thinking about the next strategy that you talk about, which is scaffolding and supporting, you say a lot about how this is like the lending of our own prefrontal cortex to the child. And again, it's this other way of providing language, providing this sense of, like you have an inner life. This is language, that we're using to be able to develop all of these capacities. So in this one, you talk about the zone of proximal development, which is this idea that children can do something really challenging, but they can do it with some really great support. And so this idea of play allows for, and this idea of play plus relationship, being in mutuality, allows for children to really do hard things. So tell us about this strategy. It's really fantastic.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Georgie.
I think that scaffold and stretch is one of my favorite strategies in the book. I have to say that when I was out at a school today in Hollywood, because Tina and I are both in the Los Angeles area, I'm out in this school and I'm seeing like kids in a transitional kindergarten class. So they're about 4 years old, coming up to their teachers, and sometimes they're coming too often. They're like every little thing. It's like, I can't get this arm off the Mr. Potato Head. Can you take it off for me? Or, and kids will keep, bringing stuff to us. They'll be like, I don't know how to, make my own peanut butter and jelly, or, whatever it is as they get older. Tina has mentioned on a couple of talks that we've done that her teenagers, young adults, are still, coming to her and her husband for help with things, and we
They
want
still
them
need to be parented because
yes,
their brains aren't
exactly.
done developing, not till about 28.
Bring their dishes down from their bedroom when they're done with their, lunch or
Lord help me.
yes. So we want to give our kids as many opportunities to build self-sufficiency and independence. Like playing with them doesn't mean that we want them to be completely reliant on us and dependent on us for everything, right? It just as much as we want to be able to give them structure and set limits when they're not allowed to do something, when they're just playing. And, it's not about letting them free play so much that they're getting away with stuff and everything. So I'm watching these kids come to their teachers and they're like, can you zip up my zipper on my jacket? Or can you take the arm off the Mr. Potato Head? And we've trained, we offer the way of play skills in trainings now for teachers. We're actually going into schools and we're teaching them how to use these strategies, especially in a place like a TK classroom, where kids are like, they're not in preschool anymore. They're a little bit bigger than that, but they're not quite ready for kindergarten sort of sit down and learn at the table and sort of, write sentences and things like that either. They're in that in-between stage. So the teachers are kind of, wanting to just do it for them. Like, because they have 25 other kids that they've got to take care of. And so if I just do the zipper really quick, then I can get to the next one and the next one and the next one. But if we slow it down and we think about ourselves as just being an assistant to the child's developing executive functioning, because that's what we're really talking about. Not only are we saying, can you hang on to your emotions enough to, tolerate the frustration or keep your attention focused long enough? Because if you take too long in that ZPD, that 4-year-old is out of there too. Is going to be like, can't help me, then never mind. But if we can slow them down just a little bit and kind of go, I wonder how we could solve this, or what would be the first step that you'd take to zip up your zipper, right? Oh, like the zipper's not together yet, so I guess we have to put it together somehow, right? So you're just problem solving with them. What you're doing is you're scaffolding so that you're giving them the support. You're not saying, I'm not going to help you. You have to do it by yourself, because they may not be ready for that yet. But you're also stretching their ability to keep their attention focused. You're stretching their ability to deal with a little bit of anxiety or frustration about whether or not this job is going to get done. You're stretching their ability to kind of stick with you and problem solve, even when they might be feeling some of that frustration, anxiety, right? These are really crucial skills that we can skip over if we just do the zipper up for them really, really fast. So it's about kind of just being a child's assistant and coaching them through and keeping them in that ZPD long enough for them to build the skill and tether the emotion regulation to the executive function. In other words, we're just like getting different parts of the brain to collaborate with each other long enough for children to be able to walk away from the experience feeling like, I got it, right? It becomes kind of a snowball of resilience where if they got that little thing, then the next time it might be a medium-sized challenge, but they will remember, whether it's explicit or implicit memory, they'll remember, I got the thing before. So, I'm somebody who can take on challenges. I'm gritty. I'm good at this. And kids often don't remember the beginning or the middle of an experience. They only remember the end. So even if you help them with 75% of it and they got it in the end, they're going to think they're the only ones who got it. And we want that to work for us. We want kids to feel like, I'm amazing. I got that for myself. Even though we helped a little bit to scaffold them. When they walk away feeling like $1,000,000, then we've got a kid who has a little bit of a resilient snowball going that they can take into maybe other bigger challenges that they're going to face in life.
I
too.
think this is so important. I'm echoing. So important throughout the lifespan of parenting. So I will say, and I'm just going to talk about a parenting trend in general. Of course, there are some kids who are, I'm going to talk about this as the protection or function gap. There are some kids who are not protected enough, or their parents aren't functioning at all. Like, definitely we have kids who show up at school, their parents never fill out the permission slips so they don't get to go on the field trips. We have parents who are neglectful. Like, obviously that's a true reality for some kids. But we also see a lot of something I'm absolutely guilty of, and that is overprotecting and overfunctioning. So instead of being our children's assistants, we just do things. Now, keep in mind, my boys are 18, 21, and 24. And still, I find myself doing things for them. And it's so funny because, like, my baby's a senior in high school. So in 6 months, he's going to be living by himself. So anything I'm doing for him that I should be supporting his development to do, like, laundry or making a phone call to set up a dentist appointment or whatever those kinds of life skills are, I am not only not stretching him to become competent and confident in these areas, but we often give this implicit message around, well, you can't handle that, or you're not good at that, so I'm going to do it for you. So we it kind of is like, we don't mean to give that message, but we do. And so I'll just give like a little rule of thumb that I use myself, because I tend to be an over functioner for everyone, not just my kids. And that is to ask myself, am I doing this and rushing into solve and rushing into fix and rushing into zip the zipper up really quickly, or stain treat something, or whatever it is, or get the last minute corsage that he forgot to order before the winter formal last weekend. These things, am I rushing in to do this because, like, if I do this, is this going to be helpful to my child? Like, he's really overwhelmed. He's really stressed. He is really grateful. He's like, Mom, I can't believe I forgot. I'm so sorry. Can you do this for me? I would really appreciate it. And I can do it. And it's, that's good for him and good for the relationship. Great. I'll make the phone call. Or am I doing it because it makes me feel better and makes me feel less anxious, but it's not really in the best interest of my child, or is it just neutral, right? So I think, you know, and I think the whole idea of like, if your kid forgets their homework, you should never bring it to them. That's how they'll learn. I don't really go by that, because I feel like, well, that's a whole other conversation about discipline. But I think, you know, if my husband called me and he was like, hey, I left my laptop at home and I'm about to start this meeting, is there any way you can bring it up? If I was like, no, you need to learn your lesson, like that would be kind of mean, actually. So I think there are times we do want to jump in and support and function for our kids, but not if we're doing it all the time, not if we're doing it for things that they can be doing themselves, and not if we're doing it for our own sense of satisfaction that undermines our child's capacity to develop.
Here, here. Oh my goodness. I think that is such a welcome message. And you know, you all are working with parents. You understand just the tremendous pressures
Oh,
of what it means to parent in this time. And
wow.
it really is, and it can feel really overwhelming, which is just another reason why I think the way that you've laid out this book just provides so many entry points. Okay, so I want to just, you know, the timing of your book. I mean, you both are, you know, in LA right now, and the children that you work with, the schools that you support, the families that are a part of your spheres, your colleagues at the Play Strong Institute have all been impacted by the trauma of these wildfires.
Yep.
And this is an unwelcome event that coincided with the publication of this book. And I really think the timing could not have been better, because there's something that you say about the impact, the healing impact of play on children who have experienced traumatic experiences. So you have a wonderful part in the strategy around narrating to integrate that I'd love for you just to dive in within the context of, I'm sure, what you're really dealing with right now with your families and children.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
it's been awful. Go ahead, Georgie.
Yeah, there's so many ways that we can prepare our children. We try our best to prepare them for the things that are going to come up in life that are, you know, difficult to devastating, because we know that kids are going to go through hard things. Just as you said, Carly, you know, a lot of people don't know that, you know, play therapists have been using things like this narrate to integrate way of approaching the stories that kids tell in play. You know, kids are natural born storytellers. As soon as they can start to basically pretend play, they're telling stories. And I was just rereading some stuff that Tina and Dan wrote a long time ago about the way that the brain makes sense of stories is the same way that we actually bond and attach to each other. The things that we think about each other, the stories that we tell about our experiences, whether we're telling those stories to ourselves or the other person that we're in relationship with, it's the way that we form our attachments, the way that we really begin to learn to relate to each other. So kids can use stories not only to remind ourselves that we have, you know, bigger people that we can turn to when we're going through something really difficult or even tragic, like we're seeing in Los Angeles right now. So many families are suffering under the weight of losing homes or losing, you know, families have lost schools. Families have had to move and they've lost their communities. Whole neighborhoods are now, you know, gone. That, you know, if we tell the story that everything's been lost and there's no way that we're going to recover, that's one way of looking at the story. But if we tell the story of looking for the helpers and seeing communities actually come together and reform and reshape how they want to rebuild, then that's a different story. That's a story of the ability to recover and find resilience again. And so kids will tell stories. They make up their own stories. And that's what Narrate to Integrate is all about, being able to look at, be with a child while they're telling a story about something difficult that happened, whether it's, I got in a fight with my friend at school and this is what he said or she said, and this is what I said, and this is how it all went down. And I'm retelling the story using animals instead of people because I'm too hurt by the whole experience to like, be that close to it. And we call that the safety of symbolic distance, which we talk about in the book. Or kids
Right.
can use their stories to, like, we're seeing my son and his cousin, other kids, we're seeing kids bring out themes about fires. Right now, every school that I've gone to in the last couple of weeks since the fires happened, kids are playing about, I'm a firefighter and I'm putting out fires, or I'm playing and creating a fireproof house with walls all around it and stuff, and it's made out of fireproof material. They're looking for ways to not only help, but to heal what's happened for themselves. And if they can imagine it, that's how powerful kids' brains are. If they can imagine a solution, even if it can't happen in real life, they lay down a different ending to an experience. They lay down a new memory, actually, in the brain. They don't have the old memory anymore. It's a new memory that's shaped by what they've added with their imagination because now they're part of it. And now they've taken control or mastery of what happens at the end. It's amazing. I want to hear what Tina has to say about
Yeah, I mean,
this.
I think, in the book we say when children can't say it, they will play it, right? And then, but what this narrate to integrate strategy does is it allows them then eventually to be able to say it and to give voice to it. And what I think is so incredible is to think about oftentimes, the difference between something being toxic or traumatic and being tolerable, or even we talk about post-traumatic growth as opposed to post-traumatic stress disorders, is the ability to make sense of an experience, particularly when you're safe enough in connection with another, right? Unfortunately, we can't protect our children from all the difficult things that happen. And many of the families that we're working with right now, the children's homes burned down and their schools burned down. And now their friends are going and scattering to other schools. So they're also losing community. There's like loss, loss, loss. The difference between that being traumatic in a way that has long-term effects and it being tolerable is typically the presence of at least one person who helps them navigate it. So what we often say is like, it's not our job, and we often can't protect our children from difficult things, but we can always walk with them through it. And play is such a huge thing. What Georgie's talking about here is that what it's doing is, one of the big things that can differentiate something between being traumatic or tolerable is whether or not we have any sense of control or empowerment. So oftentimes when, that's a huge feature of PTSD is that something traumatic is you felt overwhelmingly helpless to protect yourself, to protect something important like your home. So the way that we do that is, again, through play. So in Narrate to Integrate, it's very similar to Name It to Tame It in the Whole Brain Child. But what we're talking about is, when we use our left hemispheres, we use words and we put things in order in a story and we make sense of things. And then the right hemisphere is like what we're doing with our bodies. We're manipulating, we're building the firewalls with the blocks, and we bring a felt sense of emotion. Maybe we're making siren noises. So we're bringing lots of nonverbal and mapping the body and emotion into it. Yeah. And then we're giving words to it, especially if we're also doing a think out loud. So what happens then is we're oscillating left brain, right brain, left brain, right brain, left brain, right brain, and we're also integrating bottom up. So like the desire to like make your body do something, or an impulse, an instinct to drive, and the prefrontal's ability to say, well, wait, be more careful, do it slowly, pause and figure out, is that the best solution? So what we're really doing is integrating the brain. And what you might have known from reading The Whole Brain Child is that when the different structures of the brain that have different jobs all work together as a coordinated whole and are integrated, so differentiated and linked, then what we see is states that are flexible and adaptive, resilient, energized, and stable. So that's what's actually happening as we narrate to integrate. And I'll just say one more thing, and that is that we are meaning makers for our children.
Yes.
And so
yes, we are.
If we're like, this is devastating, this is horrible, and honestly, I have to watch myself because I'm like, it feels like January 700th and it's been a terrible month. So many other things have happened, like personal things, family things, in our community, in a global sense. There's been so much happening. And it's really tempting, and where my kid can hear me, to say like, the world's gone to shit, this is terrible, whatever. But I also could say with my kid in earshot and be so much better to say, wow, things are really hard right now. And I don't even know the answers, but we are going to do this together. Right.
Mm.
So we are meaning makers, just like when our infants fall and they look at our faces, and if we freak out, they cry. And if we're like, oh, that hurt, come here, let's dust off. They don't have as big of a reaction. That is true throughout our children's lifespan. We are meaning makers for them. It's fine for you to say the world is terrible right now, but say it to your partner, say it to your best friend. Your child needs you to be the sturdy leader and give cues of safety that even if we don't know right now, or even if we're really sad or we're having a hard time, we know we can call a friend. We know we are in this together. So we always want to have a message of hope, safety, security, connection.
Mm. Well, one great thing that happened in January is that this book came out. I would love to be able to just hear from you. What has been the most rewarding part of sharing this book with the world?
Let me say before I forget, we want to offer you guys a freebie. So if you guys will go to my Instagram, we're going to put the instructions in the chat right now and follow. We are going to send you the refrigerator sheet of all of these strategies so that you can have it on your refrigerator. And it's basically the strategy, what your kid gets from it, how to do it. And it's like cheat sheet. So we want to give that to you. I'll just be really frank, Carly. Georgie and I canceled a lot of our interviews and podcasts. It didn't feel appropriate to promote a book. So it came out last week, like 9 days ago. And we really haven't been promoting the book because we've both been housing families that lost everything. We've been supporting our clinical team. We've been going into schools. We're providing, Georgie's going to be providing tons of free play therapy. Like we are in it. And so the thing that's been the most rewarding around the book launch, and honestly, like if you guys like, we would love it if you guys would help us share it and buy it, and get it out there, because we have not, that's not been important to us, even though this is the book that so many families need. There have been more immediate needs. The thing that's touched me so much is how many of our colleagues helped pick up the reins to help us share the books and how excited they are. But my biggest hope for parents in reading this book is to say, I can make 2 minutes count. I can make 5 minutes count. And I can join with my kid in a way that is delightful for both of us, that helps me know my kid, know myself better, and to feel really empowered to feel good about who you are as a parent. That's my biggest hope for this book. What about you, Georgie?
I can't say it any better than that. The best that we've got out of this is getting this into the hands of parents and educators, and having them go, I inhaled it in a day. I can't believe that I was doing some of these things that you're teaching, and I have a name for it now, so I feel so validated. And then I learned a ton too of like things that I didn't even think of, that I'm, using, all the time whenever I can. And it's just become a way of being for me. And it's happened so fast that, we just want to be able to gift that to more families and more schools as well.
Well, we got 1 minute left, so I'm going to interject here with a quick, first of all, Carly, thank you so much for, to no one's surprise, your extreme thoughtful preparation. You bring so much experience to the screen, and we were so confident that you were going to just be right there, tracking the conversation, focused. Thank you so much for really presenting both Georgie and Tina's book and themselves in such a great light for the fan community.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
And Tina and Georgie, we are so thrilled to have both of you as newest members of the fan family. Thank you so much. I want to remind everyone, we dropped into chat the instructions that Tina was referring to. You follow her on Instagram. We'll put this out. It'll get pushed out in the when you get the recording from us. It'll be in some additional links. We'll put that instruction again in that. You'll get it in a day or two. But you follow Tina on Instagram, and then you send her a DM through Instagram that says the word fan, and they will send you back a PDF with the refrigerator piece that she was describing. So we are at 8 o'clock. We are going to do after hours with all three of these people. You can ask your own questions, offer some observations, contribute to the conversation, come hang out with us. How do you get to come to after hours? Make a donation of any dollar amount to FAN. We've been putting links in all night. If you miss the links, go to the FAN website. It'll just say donate. Come hang out with us. What an incredible opportunity. 3 huge brains that you can just and get so much more information, even than what's already been so richly offered. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. We hope to welcome you again soon. And Carly, Tina, Georgie, we'll see you in about 5 minutes in after hours. Thank you so much, and have a great night,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.